Thank you. I will read it because it's quicker and easier for me. Hopefully I will have time to present a short excerpt from one of the films. Herbert Kitchard, in his essay discussing methods to analyze post-communist social diversity, singles out the role of a cultural elite in offering solutions for societal crises by retrieving coping strategies from the past. As he points out, I quote, "In periods of societal crisis, people are capable of activating their long-term memory and scan its content in order to interpret their strategic options under conditions of uncertainty. Moreover, technical and institutional memory enhancers, scriptures, literacy, media of communication, education professionals in charge of preserving memories extend the capacity of human actors to retrieve and process information over lengthy periods of time." End of quote. I argue that allegory has become a discursive mode capable to establish a link between the past and the present by conferring new meanings to old signifiers in an artistic effort to establish national values, circumscribe a national identity and character, as well as to thematize the position of own country on the map of Europe. In this respect, a number of films by Lucian Pintilie, made during the long and chaotic period of transition that followed the 89 events in Romania, do not simply display a continuation of a highly figurative artistic style that in the communist era was meant to mislead censorship. They serve as historical lessons highlighting recurrent situations in which under irrational leadership human values become endangered. The most distinct representative of an older generation of Romanian filmmakers, now 82, Pintilie apparently assumes the task mentioned by Kitchard to retrieve distant memories from times that preceded the far too long communist era, but not in order to show up coping strategies, but rather to emphasize the causes of inexistence of such strategies. All three films under analysis in my presentation, representing three distinct moments of Romanian 20th century history, can be seen as allegories of a national destiny that seems impossible to overcome. An unforgettable summer, set in Romania of the first decades of the 20th century, tells the story of a family of a Romanian officer exiled to the politically unstable border with Bulgaria because he refuses to accept the way one of his superiors approaches his wife, a charming woman with Western European roots, played by Kristen Scott Thomas. The short film entitled Tertium non datur, meaning no third option possible, or no third possibility, is set during the Second World War and depicts a military meeting between two German officers and their allies, Romanian officers. And this is a film that consists of a single, highly dramatic scene in which what was meant to be a strategic discussion turns into a humiliating situation for the Romanian party. Too Late is set in the late 90s, a few years after the second revolt of the miners, in a mining area facing mysterious murders and the danger of apparition of a new type of man, the so-called subhuman. In my presentation, I propose to illuminate the manifold roles of intermediate references in these films, ranging from narrative, poetical, to more sophisticated philosophical, ideological, or discursive ones. These mainly pictorial or sculpture references to either individual, recognizable works of art or a certain visual art, painting or sculpture, a system, that is, colors, composition, or style, besides their immediate figurative role in the respective narrative, tend to function as separate, autonomous discourses of the artistic creation and often of the socio-political context in the film in question. As such, they often appear as an access to the reality, reveal something that can be only shown, so qualify for what has been called the Figaro by Lyotard, Deleuze, or Rodovic lately. In order to diffuse the figurative language charged with intermediate references, I will rely on three culture approaches that are interrelated in terms of their capacity to interpret the visual representation of cultural values in the context of political, historical crisis. The first is the reinvented notion of the historical and national allegory that, in line with Benjamin's concept of history seen not as a progress but as a disaster, becomes an ingredient of what can be called the spirit of our time, incompatible with the realist form and rather demanding a cognitive mapping of social phenomena. As Ismail Xavier, in his interpretation of cinematic national allegories, points out, I quote, "Allegory has acquired a new meaning in modernity, more related to the expression of social crises and as I don't know what I did here, and the transient nature of values, with special emphasis given to its connection with the sense of the fragmentation, discontinuity, and abstraction provided by compression of space and time in our contemporary technological world." End of quote. The second approach is concerned with the Westerner's gaze that Pintilie at times adopts. Based in France, Pintilie often uses Western art references, music, painting, or sculpture to ironically depict a post-communist Romanian society ignorant of individual dramas resulting from the collapse of industry, economy, infrastructure, and institutional miscommunication, and characterized by a preference for Western culture and civilizatoric forms without content. This paradoxical attitude of the insider-outsider can be best described with Homi Bhabha's concept of colonial mimicry, an ironic compromise animated by the desire for a recognizable other, the subject of a difference that is almost the same but not quite, that is, not white. The third aspect of the intermediate figuration of the crisis of societal values, that of national and individual identity, is the tendency of miniaturization. According to Gaston Bachelard, the miniature proves that the acts of fantasy are as real as those of reality. Miniature becomes the shelter of greatness by concentrating and enhancing values. It is created by a vertical vision and a distance. According to Bachelard, from distance, everything is neatly arranged, accessible, and ready to be taken in possession. In the light of the new meanings acquired by allegory discussed by Xavier, Pintilie's and other Eastern European directors' allegorical films refuse to provide humanity with an aesthetic redemption of the world in perfect forms, and I quote, "rather interacting with historical fractures and violence, especially when observed from the point of view of the defeated," end of quote. Unlike Christian allegories revealing destinies of salvation where every pain had a meaning, the films under analysis show pain and humiliation as meaningless, not connected with historical or social progress whatsoever. Moreover, the defense of Christian and human values is not related to redemption or reward. The protagonists fail, become alcoholic, migrate to the West, and lose faith in everything. The role of Christianity, and in the particular case of Romania, that of the Orthodox Church, is represented as a purely formal one in images that privilege intertextual connections between the film's pictorial composition and cultural codes deriving from painting. There is a recurrent visual feature in the post-communist Romanian film, a composition with three figures, usually male, often interpreted as a representation of the Holy Trinity. I think that there is another relevant connection that involves particularly Eastern Christianity, emphasizing its authoritative influence, revealing at the same time the patriarchal, hierarchical structure of the Romanian society. These images can be interpreted as references to icons depicting the three patriarchs or the three hierarchs, Basil the Great, Gregory the theologian, and John Chrysostom, who played pivotal roles in shaping Christian theology by providing explanation and a moral example in faith and purity. They are represented with gospel books and scrolls that stand for guidance in Christian faith. In Romanian films, this composition often appears in situations where protagonists, representatives of the church, police, or justice, are facing a hard decision, a conflict between human values and institutional rules. In Beyond the Hills, the presence of the visiting girl is against monastic rules. In Police Adjective, the three policemen take a decision relying on the explanation of the word consciousness in the dictionary, while in Too Late, the state prosecutor releases the subhuman from the mind against the instructions of his superiors. These references participate in a national allegory not only by revealing the ineffectiveness of state institutions and of those who are meant to take leadership and show example, but also by means of personifications when a single character or a community is taken as standing for the entire nation. This is the case of the family exiled to the southern border in An Unforgettable Summer, a figuration of Romania's liminal position in the European community, its imminent Balkanization, or that of the mining community in Too Late, exposed to danger of becoming a subhuman, a concept illuminated by the proxemics of the film, showing a repetitive descent deep into the mind in a slightly pedagogical way, though. After the collapse of all the communist industry. In a final denunciation of patriarchal order, we see three miners lost in the darkness of the edit, in a composition miming the icon with the patriarchs who brought light into people's life, were supposed to bring light into people's life, then with a turn of slapstick comedy characteristic of Pintilie's films, they appear covered in white cement and raised as statues above a grey crowd of miners. As Xavier Ismail points out, these intermediate references revealing the intimate connections between forms of representation and specific social conjunctures express in contemporary Eastern European films the labyrinth of political ideologies and national identities that shape the contemporary history in these countries suffering from a chronic instability. He also emphasizes the new trend of storylines involving multinational encounters of protagonists who belong to distant cultures but are led to an unexpected interaction, most of the time of a clearly private nature, in mostly international co-productions that engage different European countries. An Unforgettable Summer and Tertium Non Datur are depicting such types of encounters in which national identity is shaped as otherness through the Western gaze and the self-othering process. In these two films, art references participate in allegories of loss of humanity and values amidst barbaric and dehumanizing social conditions. Intriguingly, some of these references are the work of Constantin Brâncuș, or Brancusi, as you might know him, another Romanian artist who, just like Pintilie, made a career in France, being considered the founder of modern sculpture. In Pintilie's films, some of Brancusi's famous sculptures, mixing abstract geometrical forms with Romanian folklore motifs and depicting humanistic values like individual freedom, love, spiritual emancipation, appear in narrative contexts of war and social restlessness. In An Unforgettable Summer, for example, in the childhood memories of a voiceover narrator, the mother of Western origin, of a remarkable artistic sensitivity, beauty, and kindness, following her military husband to the Romanian-Bulgarian borders in a mission to control Bulgarian insurgents, is shown in the pose of Brancusi's sleeping muse, just before a traumatic, inhuman event pushes her into alcoholism and destroys family peace. A similar figuration of endangered values can be encountered in Pintilie's Too Late, an allegorical film about the collapse of Romanian mining industry that implies this occurrence of the subhuman. On the table of the state attorney, reluctant to solve the case of mysterious murders in the mining area, there are miniatures of Brancusi's masterpieces, the column of the infinite, the gate of the kiss, and the table of silence, looking fragile under a kitchen lamp on a sturdy elephant leg, that stand menacing to tramp over them in a plastic figuration of how little Western European democratic values and local traditions count in midst of socio-political anarchy. The artistic imagination then thus is capable to see the totality in the small, to discover the tiny detail in the big picture, the individual drama in great historical movements. But Pintilie also warns that the distance ensuring this Lilliputian vision is too big to grant the possession of values represented by the miniature. This distance concerns both sides. For Western Europe, Romanian contribution to a shared cultural heritage is almost unknown. For Romanians, democratic Western cultural values remain inaccessible, simple forms without content. The miniature as metaphor of national identity and an acute complex of inferiority is in the focus of Pintilie's last film so far, a short entitled Tertium non datur. Set during the Second World War, this is an anecdotic story of a meeting between Romanian officers and their allies, German officer and his assistant of Eastern European origin. But what was meant to be a strategic encounter turns into a humiliating situation that in the end prompts Romanian participants to reconsider their national and individual pride and patriotism. The scene of intercultural exchange that Xavier Ismail considered typical for the European cinematic production of the last 2 decades is an obvious allegory of Romania's negotiations with the European Union before becoming member in the last round in 2007, just a few months after Pintilie's film was released. The two officers represent two different attitudes of the European Union towards Eastern Europe. In different distanciation, the German general doesn't utter a word during the meeting, remains distant and expressionless, and the curiosity of the collector, because it turns out that the young officer has in possession a rare Romanian stamp of an immense value with a Moldavian crest on it, one of the 2 existing in the world. During dinner, the stamp gets lost, and in a highly emotional and dramatic scene, the Romanian general orders his officers to undress full Monty in order to prove that nobody has stolen the valuable object. Eventually, it turns out that the stamp got stuck to a plate. The guests take their leave, and one of the officers confesses that he owns the other stamp, a present from his mother, a cherished object meant to protect him in need. However, after the aforementioned humiliating scene, he chooses to burn the stamp, a miniature concentrating 2 contradictory value systems and identities, patriotism and self-othering, that is, adopting the image of the other created by an external Western gaze. I will show just 2 minutes of this from this film. In the end, the whole film is shown in fast forward, while the credits are going down, and it's here. And the soundtrack, unfortunately, it's not subtitled. It tells about the desire to forget, desire for amnesia, and ironically, while this happens while the memory of the medium is activated by this fast-forward mode, the video mode. Okay, I will just show, just to make an idea. Then. For those who understand Romanian, this will be more interesting.
Vă rog, lăsați! Nu trebuie! Vreți să vă aduc un iepure? Haideți să vă aduc un iepure!
Nu vreau să-mi visez strămoșii, nu vreau să-mi visez istoria, lasă-mă să-mi pierd memoria. Lasă-mă să uit că am fost reptile, lasă-mă să uit victorii inutile, lasă-mă să uit că uită toți de noi. Lasă-mă să uit mormane de eroi, lasă-mă să mă imaginez în populația Chinei, lasă-mă să mă imaginez în destinul Franței, lasă-mă să-mi imaginez imperii, lasă-mă să nu mai număr gunoierii. Vreau Românie în delir, vreau țară vie, nu un cimitir, vreau să am motive să respir. Tertium non datur, tertium non datur, tertium non datur, tertium non datur.
Okay, and to sum up, I was arguing with Ismail Xavier in my presentation that allegory comes to express the historicity of human experience and values in times of social crisis, serving in the cultural production of post-communist countries the process of self-understanding and reinvention of national identity. As I have shown, intermediate references either to painting a system, its composition, either to individual art objects, become central ingredients of this allegorical approach. Intriguingly, these references, even those to Western art, don't serve the dissolution of cultural boundaries between East and West. On the contrary, they are emphasizing difference. As Lucian, a contemporary Romanian historian, emphasizes in his book Why is Romania Different? This difference is mainly due to historical delay, an essentially patriarchal and hierarchical society, and a merely formal adoption of Western values. Fortunately, the new generation of Romanian film directors, Mângiu, Puiu, Porumboiu, Șerban, just to name a few, manages to sublimate the identity crisis by assuming and thematizing otherness in many award-winning films, and thus orchestrate, ironically, the national affirmation of Romania through cinema of otherness. Thank you very much.